Badlands, running to Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody watching Breaking History this week. How you doing, Gordon?
I'm fantastic, Matt. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm all right. We got a lot to go through today, and there's some current events that we're going to be touching at. But I think that the thing that really that we were talking about was something that we were both a bit frustrated with, which is a concerted operation to reframe the narrative of what America has always been all about. And there's been a lot of effort to try. I've noticed in recent last couple of years, it's spiked. I found is this push towards narratives that try to make it seem as though the entire U.S. Revolution itself, that established for the first time a constitutional republic, was a complete fraud and aberration and defiance of the moral traditions of true natural law and the hereditary divine right of kings, which is the natural order of humanity, which those hot-headed, secret society loving founding fathers, those Satanists, broke away from and created new founding myths that persuaded everybody that somehow hereditary controls of the world is actually an illegitimate way to run society, and that we should ultimately, if we want to have order back and have freedom and have some security for our kids and a good economy, we should just restore the legitimate nobility, the legitimate bloodlines that really have our best interests at heart. And I've seen a lot of this stuff coming through, especially the alternative media world.
Yeah.
And there's something that we're going to hit at pretty shortly that we're just going to make fun of and tear apart to set things right, I believe, or at least to do our part in this one little show.
That's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna rip Candace Owens apart, and
we're gonna rip her apart.
Yeah, so that's what's about to happen. But let's start with the sponsor read, and then we'll get into that.
All right, good. So Pet Club, here it is.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
All right. Thank you, Pet Club. All right. So let's just, have a little listen to the video that we both watched from Candace Owens and Milo. I can never pronounce his last name. Can you pronounce his last name?
Yiannopoulos.
Yiannopoulos. Okay. All right.
Yiannopoulos.
There we go.
Yeah. Close enough.
Yeah. So let's just play that and have a listen to Candace's Yiannopoulos. There we are. So this is Candace's newfound discovery of what America was all about. Candace the Patriot. Here we go.
I think this is how this country was founded.
Make it full screen if you would.
Trumped up Reddit libertarian hissy fit. I think this is how this country was founded, on a trumped up Reddit libertarian hissy fit that was not really all it was cracked up to be, but was the basis for a destructive and a self-harm story, a founding mythology of a country that ripped out the natural system of government that is supposed to obtain over men on earth and pulled God out of the system too. Is this my British coming out? I know.
No, I'm gonna.
There is something a little similar about the way this country was founded to what you're talking about, which might suggest why this country is so vulnerable and so is so susceptible to precisely this kind of psychological and political warfare, because it is how the nation knows itself. How it was born was in a fit of injustice that was corrected by a few brave men taking a stand. That's the whole story of America.
Okay, so I'm interested now because this is going to bring us right into the occult and what they actually believe in, because you're right. The founding of America is an absolute myth. I'm actually reading a book.
supported by the French.
But hold on. What is the book that I'm reading? The Secret Founding of America. I'm reading a book, and it's basically just blowing my mind, and it's telling me that everything you think you know is completely false. But when I was in study with some priests, they sort of pish-poshed me. You know, I was in England studying with some priests, and they were just sort of like, everything that you Americans think you know is so foolish. Like, America was obviously founded by Freemasons. And now I'm really understanding, like, yes, you had these Freemason lodges that came over, you know, the Scottish Rite, B'nai B'rith, and they were the reason behind the Civil War. They were the reason, but they were literally fighting for control of America. And the way that they do this is very similar to what we're seeing today. There's this kind of mainstreamed lie. I mean, let's get to, if you ask Americans, oh, it was just the tea tax was too high. And this is what we did. We started throwing it out in the harbor, and we said, we're ready to go to war. Now that I say it, it sounds so stupid.
Sounds kind of dumb, don't it? Sounds kind of dumb.
Basic.
Like, I know it was a couple hundred years ago, but people were people.
What? How much does this tea cost? Oh no, Paul Revere. The British are coming. It's actually
just stop.
It's
just stop.
So childish.
And it's gay. It's gay. It's gay. It's gay.
Yeah.
So the American Revolution is fake and gay. Big discovery.
I kind of wish we had a longer clip of that, because I kind of wanted to continue to hear them make asses out of themselves. But yeah, I mean, first of all, let's just jump on Candace first, because Milo is a provocateur. He was one of the few people that was out there like using his real name in 2016, and I give him credit for his willingness to go out there and say things to make people uncomfortable. Like, I think that he was a useful figure back in that first iteration of what people call the meme wars during Trump's initial campaign.
Yes.
But I also recognize he's a provocateur. So when he says stuff like that, like he was saying, you know, he has said some other stuff that is just absolutely insane. A lot of it like degenerate, like homosexual stuff that he says, I think, just to get a rise out of people. Candace, though, like jumping on it and running with it. I mean, she really tipped her hand there, because Candace Owens, for those who don't know, relatively recently, like the past like couple years, married into the British aristocracy. She married a British royal, I guess you would say. I mean,
it's like a lord. It's a lord.
He's like a lord. He's a lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, royal. I don't know how. I guess royal is the House of Windsor. But yeah, she married into the House of Lords, and was studying with priests in England, in London. Oh, really? And she wants to come educate us now. She's in the middle of reading a book, and we'll get to the book in a minute. But she was studying with priests in London, and now wants to come educate us about what the occult is all about, because priests in London taught her about the occult. So the irony of this entire situation is laugh out loud funny. Anyone who's read Matt's books or is familiar with Matt's work at all is probably laughing right now just listening to me explain that. And before I turn it over to you, I just want to show everyone what this book is. And she says, I'm reading a book. So I don't even think she's read the whole book yet. Like, let us know, Candace, when you read the full book, that we can come back and have a discussion on it. But The Secret Founding of America, The Real Story of Freemasons, Puritans, and the Battle for the New World. And this is written by a guy named Nicholas Haggar, okay? And let me just educate you real quick on who Nicholas Haggar is. And this is just 5 minutes of me looking online of who he is. I found his page. Nicholas Haggar, born 1939 London, is a British poet, man of letters, cultural historian and commentator, and philosopher. He has been a proponent of philosophical universalism. He was educated at the Oakland School in Loughton, Essex, and at the Chigwell School in Essex, where he read classics. He attended Worcester College, Oxford, where he read English literature under Christopher Ricks.
All right, no major red alarms yet there. This is all okay.
Okay.
All right.
Haggar worked with British intelligence in the 1960s and early 1970s. He was talent spotted by John Cecil Masterman, provost of Worcester College, while Haggar was there. He was interviewed by Charles Woodhouse at MI6's front office in 3 Carlton Gardens. In his 2-volume memoirs, My Double Life, interesting title, He says he declined permanent involvement with MI6, but describes periodic involvement with intelligence assignments, spying on Muammar Gaddafi and African national liberation movements such as UNITA, ZUNA, ZAPU, and MPLA. I mean, are you effing kidding me right now? Candace? Are you a serious person right now, Candace? It's like,
yeah,
I could almost just end the show right there. We just walk like that. That right there, I think, was the mic drop. I mean, you're reading a book written by an MI6 spook that is intended as a psyop to demoralize Americans into rejecting the official story of the founding. Wow, I'm not even mad. I'm just disappointed.
I'm disappointed too, you know, because I want to like her, and I have liked her. I've been impressed with her ability to put fairly complex thoughts into words in tense settings, defending, you know, traditional values against very hostile anarchist mindset Marxists. It takes a lot of courage to do that. So I've appreciated her work and her courage and her discipline of thinking, but something has happened along the way, which I would imagine an operation probably was put into her world that she wasn't properly sort of prepared for, I would imagine. I mean, she met this guy. The story of her meeting her husband is weird unto itself. The Lord George Farmer, whose father is Michael Farmer, Lord Michael Farmer, who's like the top metals trader, copper trader, deals with gold as well. In England, he was treasurer, Lord Treasurer of the UK government under David Cameron. So this guy is pretty high up there. He's a leading member of the House of Lords, the Michael Farmer, the father. And something happened where they were at a Turning Point USA conference, and as the story goes, they met each other. George Farmer starts flirting with her. 3 weeks later, after first setting eyes on each other, they're married, like right there.
What such romance,
you know? Yeah.
Guys, like every girl's dream just to meet some guy at a Turning Point, meet a British lord at a Turning Point USA conference while listening to Charlie Kirk opine about the need to bankrupt ourselves to support the state of Israel. Excuse me while I go vomit like everything that I ate this morning. Well, I mean, God, Candace, you're just...
It's living into the Disney princess dream, I guess, that so many young girls have had baked into their subconscious, that it wasn't dealt with properly by Candace, but they profiled her, I guess. I'm guessing. Yeah. Either way, she jumped on this opportunity to put on the silver slipper, and before you know it, she then is married she's becoming a Catholic. So she was all of a sudden doing the rosary thing along with around the same time as Stuart, what was his name? Stuart Brandt. Not Stuart Brandt, Russell Brand is going through something kind of similar, as a spiritual awakening and becoming sort of a trad Catholic sort of convert at the same time, promoting things that I could see kind of the nudging towards this restoration of this old idea that once nearly destroyed humanity about 1,000 years ago, called the Crusades. And this utopian notion of the kingdom of Jerusalem and Solomon's temple, which was like the driving force of the Crusades, which has seen a resurgence in recent years. So that's a troubling thing. And so this guy, Lord Michael Farmer, who's the treasurer, is actually, I think it seems like he met, this is the guy that you just like read the bio of, Nicholas Haggar, this MI6 high-level Oxford spy who's there with David Cameron there just in 2006. And this guy, for people who don't know, like the actual symbol for MI6, like he's trying to act like, oh, what a great revelation that I've discovered this MI6 operative who spied on Gaddafi and black nationalist movements and tutored the Emperor Hirohito's son. Like, this guy's kind of everywhere. This guy's putting out like a big revelation specifically to Americans that their nation is built on a satanic fraud with all-seeing eyes of Horus and stuff. But the fact is, if you look at MI6, their actual founding symbol is the Eye of Horus as well. Like, it's not like it's And this is not a founding symbol of the United States. This is something that was brought in 1933 when there was a big fight to create a new age, like a new world order out of the fires of the Great Depression as the solution to impose order out of chaos. So that was a new thing. This is not something that George Washington was playing with or anything like that. That came out like 90 years ago by figures who were part of the thing that you and I had discussed last week, the Pilgrim Society, this Anglo-American elite front inside of the fifth column controllers of the United States that were running through the Scottish Rite, the different secret orders. These were the ones who brought in this Anglo-American special relationship that brought in this symbolism into the United States on behalf of their British imperial handlers. So this is what Haggar actually is devoted to. So when this guy's like sounding the alarm that America's built on but now that I ordered this book and I read through the general summary, and I'm like, okay, this is a sophisticated enough of an argument, and there's enough half truths that make it popular for the psyche, because you and I have discussed this too, that it's true. You can't account for the American Revolution if you don't look at Freemasonic lodges. That is true too. But then where is the half truth? Where are the lies being infused as Trojan horses in the narrative? I don't know if that's something you want to speak to at all.
Man, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I want to speak to about this. You have talked about on this show about how the Freemason, like the Freemason like Masonic thing, the lodges in America were all warped and skewed since the founding, and what they were in the 1770s versus what they are today in as far as America is concerned. Two different things. From just a base logical standpoint, if what they are asserting in this clip is true and accurate, and that the founding of America was a psyop, basically, or a psyac to run against the American public, they wouldn't have waited 250 years to implement the totalitarian takeover. I don't think. I mean, I understand that we've been living under a system of state capture for at least 1963. Arguments can be made about 1913 with the founding of the Federal Reserve. I understand that there have been like incrementally they have made they have confined us to this open air prison, this concentration camp. But I think that would have happened much quicker had 1776 been just a total ruse. I don't think they would have waited until 2025 to do to take away our free speech, right? They're going to wait 250 years to take away our free speech. Man, we'll get them soon enough, 2.5 centuries from now.
Yeah, I tend to think the same thing too. I think if it was really like this feudal, evil, satanic agency that was always in control, then there's no way we would have had the progress, the ability to enjoy this very conversation. We would have been already enslaved for many generations. And well, we wouldn't exist, but the world would be totally already dark for many generations. So there's overlooking a fight. There's a brushing away of an actual battle against this oligarchical thing. And I think it's very important because people fall prey to these sorts of arguments that we've seen put out by Candace and this fellow Nicholas Haggar, because of a lack of awareness about the reality of the battles that had occurred all over the world in the years leading up to 1776, as well as thereafter, but especially the years leading up to. And I got an article that I'm going to just pull up that I wrote. It's a chapter of one of my recent books called Revenge of the Mystery Cults, which does go into an occult evaluation of our history going into the deep past. Volume 1 was Mystery Babylon in the Age of Aquarius. Volume 2 is called Rosicrucian Golem, which is and Volume 3 is Edgar Poe's Final Mystery. So sort of dealing with what was Poe a part of, what was he doing, who killed him and why, and what about that final unsolved mystery that Poe writes in his trilogy of Inspector Dupin short stories, which deal with sort of true crime in a sense. This third one, the mystery of the murder of Mary Roget, is dealing with the real story of a real girl who died, Mary Rogers, in 1841 in New York, who was ritualistically murdered just outside of a property of the Colonel Stevens clan, the high-level patrician family of the United States that set up something called Sybil's Cave in Hoboken, New Jersey. And in my essay, I'm just asking the question, well, what is this Sybil's Cave next to the Elysian Fields in New Jersey? That was a big tourist spot back in Edgar Allan Poe's day, just across the Hudson River, where this woman died. And she was died again when she was murdered in a very ritualistic manner. The man who was going to become her husband, who seems to be a close friend and ally of Edgar Poe, was also ritualistically murdered just outside of Sybil's Cave 2 months later. So I'm asking the question, like, well, what was that all about? Who ran Sybil's Cave? What is Sybil's Cave and the oracles of the ancient Sibyls? Like, because that was the old system of oracles that managed the ancient world that was being infused into the U.S. establishment and the governing class that Edgar Poe was trying to bring awareness to through both his stories as well as his nonfiction works. And ultimately, what did he expose and who killed him? So I try to do that in that third book, and there's a chapter that deals with this question of Freemasonry in America per se, right? Are all Freemasons, are all lodges equal? Are they all bad historically? I know today most lodges do seem to be quite bad, but was that always the case? I also know many good people in Freemasonic lodges who are good people. So what is it? Like, what is really the story? And so I'm going to just show this screen here. Because I want people to be equipped to know how to deal with these sorts of arguments. And you can't deny. The first mistake is to deny or to not look at the existence of the fact that people like George Washington or Benjamin Franklin or Marquis de Lafayette were, in fact, Freemasons. That's a picture on the right there of Henry Clay, a leading protectionist, was Secretary of State of America, of the United States. Personally, I think that his work during the War of 1812 was instrumental in keeping the U.S. alive and fighting through all of the traps that were set for it, with the second, you could call it the Second War of Independence against the British Empire during that 3-4 year period. Now, were they Freemasons? Certainly they were. Did they use Freemasonic lodges to carry out counterintelligence, to coordinate things? Yes, they did. That is true too. Was it a big part of their identities? So. I mean, you could say that George Washington, these paintings where you see George Washington with the Masonic apron, they were mostly all painted long after he had died. And things like, the Washington Monument, the big Egyptian obelisk, people have seen that. They're a little bit weirded out. I know I was weirded out when I went there as a Canadian tourist and I saw this thing for the first time. And I was like, interesting choice, an Egyptian obelisk to honor your founding father. And then I discovered, that was actually built in 1832, like 30 plus years after Washington was dead. And as the story goes, it was a nationwide contest of artists, to all the artists, to see who could come up with the best design for a monument for the first time. There was no monument in the Capitol honoring, George Washington. So all the artists of America put out their submissions. And it was a shock that the committee of like 5 people overseeing this contest chose this obelisk. That was everyone found it bizarre. The citizens, all of the artists, most people in government were like, what the hell is going on? They didn't agree with this. So this was done during the 1830s to sort of try to retool or rebrand what America was all about. And I don't think Washington would have been, people were expecting to see like an actual statue of Washington on a horse or something of that sort. So it was weird. Now, people today, though, looking back, think, see, that's the sort of thing Washington would have wanted. Now, okay, they were, in fact, operating through Masonic lodges. And in this article, I get across, something rather interesting here. That Poe himself was a member of something known as the Society of the Cincinnatus. It was a secret society, and it was based upon trying to keep the traditions and the ideas of the American Revolution alive after the Revolution. Because that's the problem. After you have a revolution, as they say, strong men create good times, good times create weak men create bad times create strong men, So you got this problematic cycle, this loop. And to get out of it, they were thinking, well, how could we create something that would really bring in the youth, the children, the grandchildren of those founding fathers, not all of them, but many of them, and bring them into maintaining the dream and improving upon it against America's enemies that would not give up the dream of destroying America and reabsorbing it back under the British fold, back under the British Empire. So if you look at it, people like Jean-Sylvain Bailly, Antoine Lavoisier, the leading French Republicans, who most of them got their heads cut, like lopped off, but who were instrumental in 1776 also in overseeing France's intervention to assist the United States against the British Empire. These are the people that Milo has a strong disdain for. They were members of what was known as the Nine Sisters Lodge. So there was at the time a war between various lodges. You had the French Grand Orient was not one thing. There were multiple lodges. You had some that had a satanic worldview that saw mankind as being wired as a species to be ruled over by a master class. And you had others like those who circled around Benjamin Franklin. We saw it in the case of Vienna, where you had a Republican network at the True Harmony Lodge. These are some of the leading members and founders of the True Harmony Lodge of Amadeus Mozart, who was a member of it. These were people who, like, what do you have here is Angelo Soliman on the left, who was the Grand Master. He was a Nigerian prince who was sold into slavery. He became a Christian and he rose to the ranks of society to become a courtier and advisor to Joseph II, who also played a positive role in promoting republicanism in Europe, until his sister Marie Antoinette lost her head in the takeover of the French Revolution and the transformation of the revolution into a bloodbath. And then he kind of went crazy and he died. And then his enemies took over, at the time, Austria. Soliman, and there you have Ignace, you have a variety of these people here. Mozart's father, Leopold, who taught him, and also Haydn, Joseph Haydn, were also members of this lodge. Soliman, after this whole lodge was purged by 1792. Mozart was killed. He wrote to his wife Constance that he had been poisoned. 3 weeks later, he was dead. Most of these people were all purged, were murdered. Soliman was killed, and his body, get this, was put into a museum. They stuffed his body and put him into a museum with monkeys in 1800. So for the next 45 years in Vienna, Soliman, this guy was a scientist. He was a musician. He was a philosopher, a statesman. They killed him, taxidermied his body, and put it into like a museum in a monkey exhibit next to other, like, I guess, African, like dead Africans that they did something similar to. So there was like a disdain for what these people were representing, as a rejection of the idea that humanity was designed to be ruled over by a master class. So it was a totally opposing view. And in this thing, there's George Foster, who's an enemy of the Freemasons, actually visits Mozart's Vienna Lodge. He's an anti-Masonic philosopher, George Foster, from England. And he writes then an article where he describes what he discovered having encountered Mozart and company at the Soliman Lodge of New Harmony. And he described their journal. And he said, it publishes a Freemason's journal in which everything, faith, the oath, and ceremonies, and even fanaticism, is more openly discussed than at home in Saxony. The best scholars and poets are members of this lodge. They make light of the whole idea of secrecy and have transformed the entire thing into a society of rational, unprejudiced, and even dedicated enlightenment. So these guys, if you actually go to their journals that they were publishing, they were saying that sacred geometry is not to be kept secret for the inner elite. And they show you exactly the constructions of the golden section of how the Pentagon, if you want to construct the Pentagon, it should be part of any elementary education. Everybody should know how their mind can understand how to take just a circle and a radius, and from that symbol information, know how to construct the relationship of the golden section that is necessary then to build square root of 5 minus 1 or square root of 5 plus 1 even, and then generate something that will wrap 5 equal times around the perimeter, the circumference of that circle. It should not be something that is only known and then manipulated by an elite occult priesthood. And they're doing this in their scientific journals. They're promoting mass education for orphans. They're helping to promote choral music for people of all walks of life and classes to experience the higher qualities of polyphonic beauty as well as philosophy. And they're promoting books and literary magazines for the poor. So they're trying to bring everybody into a process, kind of like what Thomas Paine is doing in the Crisis Papers, as well as in his famous documents that helped organize American farmers to understand the highest philosophical ideas that were shaping all of history and all of their species, in common sense, right? I'm talking that pamphlet is just wonderful, and it really helps to get across that this is not a battle just for the elites. This is a battle for all humankind to create a new age where everybody is treated as being made equal in the living image of the Creator, such that the founding principles of the Constitution and the Declaration will actually make sense, and it won't just be like nice words that pacify the plebes or something like that. The other thing that I think is important.
Real quick. So a good example of a society where the elites did harbor all of the knowledge of mathematics themselves would be the Mayans and the Aztecs. The Aztecs primarily. The Aztecs used that to calculate the celestial movement of the stars, and then they would plan their rituals around, like you saw it in Apocalypto, like Mel Gibson's movie, where they would plan their rituals around like when the eclipse would happen, so they could sacrifice people to the gods and then tell the people, we have satiated the gods and that's why they've given us the sun back, like that kind of stuff. So there are examples of what you're describing when you hold on to that knowledge and you don't let other people understand it and study it, how that can be weaponized against the population to control them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a perfect example. And you could see like the difference when you read the writings of Benjamin Franklin after he discovered the nature of electricity. He was really working hard to popularize in every way possible his discovery. So he didn't want to keep it secret the way members of the Royal Society of England and others had wished to keep science secret only for the inner elites to control it like a tool of power, as the Aztecs did with their knowledge of eclipses, but rather to make it something available for everybody. And Benjamin Franklin created games, for schools and kids and people to, just have fun with this idea of electricity by taking a feather and rubbing like a Leyden jar and then holding hands with members of your family or your friends, and then having a spark hit the person at the end of the human chain, right? And things like that made the mind open itself up to hypothesize and to get excited about God's creation and not see science as something apart from God, but rather part of this process that we're all engaged in, participating in as part of creation, right? As not a passive part of creation to experience the laws, but rather to both experience, discover, and then act upon, like play with in a way that the laws, like for example, when you discover the laws of electricity, the laws are no longer something which can simply lord over you and burn your houses down when there's like a thunderstorm, or like you discover the laws of eclipses and their correlation with water cycles, with floods. When you discover that there's a correlation, now it's not something that just can destroy, but it's something you can work with. You could start preventatively putting food away and preventing future calamities and deep, starvation periods because of the periodic floods that will tend to occur. Or you can harness the flow of water in rivers to make turbines move and generate electric currents that can then be applied to make life better. So the forces of nature become the servants under the condition that we are responsible enough to obey, like willfully obey the laws of God. So to the degree we obey and abide by, we give up our right to do whatever we want, right? We can start working with those laws as our servants. And then all of a sudden the laws of aerodynamics serve us, because now all of a sudden, though we were not born with wings, we can fly, right? We can, the laws of thermodynamics become something that can serve us instead of just burning our houses down and cook our food. So there's this idea of this living reciprocity with God. And the thing that I want to also get across is that the battle between it's not like all lodges were good. The American, like the point of a deep state is that it's an insurrectionary movement, and it was successful because it operated through also competing Masonic lodges. And as we pointed out with the purge of the New Harmony Lodge in Austria, or the purge of the Nine Sisters Lodge in France, where all of the leading members got their heads cut off, other lodges thrived and took over, and they were premised on a very evil idea, one I think more represented by the figure of Albert Pike. And Albert Pike rose to become, and Candace Owens even brings that up. She brings up the Scottish Rite. She brings up B'nai B'rith. But she's then acting like these are the causes of why there's been American wars, the War of Independence, the Civil War. And it's like, well, number one, the B'nai B'rith, it's true, was it is a Freemasonic entity. It's modeled on the lodge system. It has degrees of initiation, an esoteric and an exoteric structure to it. It was built in 1851. People like Judah Benjamin.
I was going to say B'nai B'rith, I don't think was around in 1776, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it was created, I think, like you said, 75 years after the founding of America. So the fact that she's like referencing B'nai B'rith, which I do not have a positive view of B'nai B'rith. I think I would agree with the assertion that B'nai B'rith is something malevolent. Like, I do not think B'nai B'rith is something good.
Well, and that's the thing. She's acting like it was something that was tied to the creation of America or the sustenance of America. It was created to destroy America. The leading members of the Confederacy were members like Judah Benjamin, the Secretary of State under of the Confederacy, was a founding leading member of the B'nai B'rith. Yeah. So it's like
she's conflating things that because she probably either she doesn't understand this stuff herself, which I tend to doubt. I think she's smart enough to go do 5 minutes of research and figure out when B'nai B'rith was founded before going on a podcast and making these claims. More likely, she's being intentionally deceptive because of her her newfound husband and her ties now to London. But I think it's really important for us to unpackage what's at play here, like the bigger elements at play here, and why this is why she's doing this. I think we can't possibly just discern, truly understand. She could have her own motivations. She could be acting in earnest and just be deeply misinformed. She could be again animated by something more malevolent. So rather than trying to analyze her, I think it's more important to analyze why is this message resonating with people in this moment. So number one, I think people have a desire to oversimplify things. They want simple answers to complex problems. They see things in the world that they can't understand. They're frustrated by the circumstances of the world, and they want a simple answer. And simple answers often come in the form of blanket assertions, like blanket blame, blaming an entire group of people for the acts of a few, to say that any person who's ever been a Freemason is evil because the 33rd degree the inner sanctum of the Freemasonic movement is evil, is a little silly. That's like saying anyone who ever joined a fraternity in college. Like, I was in a fraternity in college, because it was a social club, it was a drinking club, right? That somehow ties me to every other organization that has the same name throughout the world. That's where you're getting off the reservation, and you're getting into really silly tinfoil hat domain.
Yes.
So nuance is really important, and being able to break things down and engage in these kind of discussions without getting super emotional and angry and picking up your ball and going home, which is often what happens online when people start talking about this stuff. So that's number one. So number two, what drove Candace and others to go to this path? Well, at the heart of all of this, in my opinion, is the frustration with Donald Trump, because the perception that Donald Trump is controlled by a foreign society, by namely Israel, by the Zionist movement. That is what the underlying premise of all of these people, Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, and others like them, that's what their underlying frustration is. That's what they're animated by and they're expressing. And rather than trying to dig into a deeper understanding of what is actually happening versus what the headline says, what Trump says when he comes out and makes a speech, or he gets his soundbite in that is obviously like a strategic deployment. And they think that Trump, who has demonstrated a very high level of cognition and a genius up until this point, they think that he's too foolish to understand that the stuff he's saying is antagonizing his base and is contradicts the America First movement, like everything he's saying as it relates to Israel. And we're going to get to Israel and the whole Qatar thing, because I think a very significant thing happened yesterday in the news cycle. So I think it's worth, like, we are going to get there. I saw Fernie in the chat. Let me just pull this up. At the very beginning when we were going live, said, can you make sense about Israel and Hamas? Hamas was created by Israel, correct? That's why we are here. Clarification. Yeah, we will get to that. We've covered a lot of that before, but we will do like a quick summary before we get into the news cycle or the news story. But I think it's really important to understand that that's what is driving people to this. And it's blackpilling. It's cynicism. People are being pushed into cynicism because this thing that they believed in for so long, the America First movement, President Donald Trump, they see it now, at least as the lens and the framing is being told to them, that they have been betrayed by Trump, that Trump is turning his back on the America First movement, that he's selling out to Israel. And because of all of that, he must have been bad the entire time. The whole thing was a fraud. We were all fools for standing on the rug and believing that anything good in this world could possibly be generated. And we just need to resign ourselves to cynicism and the fact that evil is everywhere. There is no hope. And we should all just take the black pill. That is ultimately what is at the core of what we are witnessing right now in like the social media battle space. Yep. It's really, really sad to see, but I've seen a lot of people who, some I know personally, take that black pill and go down and resign themselves to that fate. And it's sad. It's really sad, but it's important. That's why it's important to remain as objective as you can in analyzing this stuff and not get sucked into these the emotional tides of the maelstrom.
Absolutely. So on that note, here, let's maybe shift gears and look at some current events, and specifically this attack on Hamas, because I think at this point, hopefully people are mentally strong enough to, and I know if you're an audience here, if you're watching this show, you've got your discoveries under your belt, but the idea of being able to communicate this to others is very important, and having this kind of conversation is really important. The nuanced approach to not rejecting the thesis that Freemasonic agencies played a role in shaping big things throughout history, including America, but understanding like where are the battle lines, like what are the clash of sets of ideas that are opposing, only one of which being in harmony with natural law, and the lack of which is bringing us into a situation of crisis, disorder, and cataclysm, unless we can really restore a proper idea that the founding fathers had aligned their minds and souls to, which, we've got a small window of opportunity to do it right now. And what you've just pointed out, there was a strike on Qatar by Israel.
Well, but before we get there, let me just finish the other thing, but with this note that I think that Candace is speaking to something that she's not entirely wrong when she talks about the conflict between the occult and the founding fathers. Like my general thesis is that the war that we are fighting right now, the information war that we're fighting right now, is a continuation of a war that started probably before 1776, but really became on the surface during that revolution. And there have been counter strikes. There have been blows back and forth. And the British, so to speak, the British elite, the people who were controlling the colonies before that, came back with a vengeance after 1776, after the surrender at Yorktown, and tried over and over and over, and succeeded at certain points in trying to put their thumb on the scale and put America back in the barn, right? And then you mentioned the Congress of Vienna, 1815, in your article. That's basically what they're talking about, like what Candace and Milo were talking about. You were getting at, and I've seen this movement out there online: the restoration of the monarchy. Democracy is a failure. The people are too stupid to manage themselves and too stupid to be trusted with governance. Yep. So we should just restore the monarchy. That's what happened in 1815 with the Congress of Vienna. It was like, let's reverse this whole
Yeah.
trend towards democracy and self-governance and go back to monarchy. So you're
Yeah.
just watching this happen all over again. And the fact that Candace just married into British nobility should not be lost on anybody. I mean, and she's referencing a guy whose Wikipedia page, he openly confesses, I've never joined MI6, but I've been working with them throughout my career. Like, what?
Yeah.
So just use your common sense as you like look at this stuff.
Yeah, and if that's what's on his openly acknowledged Wikipedia page, you could only imagine what's on his unofficial real bio, right?
The skeletons in his closet, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that whole the recognition of the Congress of Vienna as such an important moment. This is Henry Kissinger, who was made, by the way, a Knight of the British Empire, a Knight of the Order of St. Michael and St. George in 1992 for services rendered. That same Sir Henry Kissinger, his first book, his first master's thesis that got him access to these inner clubs of the Bilderberg Group, of the CFR, back in the late 50s, was on his appraisal of the Congress of Vienna, which he throughout his entire life made a point was the organizing principle of his entire career, was establishing on this earth a situation that would justify a new Congress of Vienna for the 21st century. And that 1815 Congress is so important because you had the orchestrators of it, Castlereagh, Metternich, the Prince Metternich, the grand strategist representing the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Castlereagh being the British grand strategist who worked together. The idea was to take the chaos of the outcome of what they said. They lied, but they said that the Napoleonic Wars that had ravaged Europe were the consequence of having naive nobles and oligarchs who permitted too much creative freedom, that allowed for too many Republican revolutionary ideas in the 1770s, 80s, 90s, and that resulted in this this bloodbath, right? Of the French Revolution was a bloodbath. It created a condition of basically a Napoleon who could fill the vacuum because all the leaders on both sides of the aisle, left and right, took turns killing each other, all orchestrated by the Martinist Freemasons that had just purged the Nine Sisters Lodge. People like, there's a number of them, but this is the thing that had been working with for Jeremy Bentham of the British Empire. He had worked to subvert the possibility that France could like truly replicate the successes of what the American colonies had just done. And if it was going to work in France, then it was going to work next in Poland, and it was going to work next in Austria. It was going to work next in Spain, where similar Republican networks were in place and were preparing the groundwork to overthrow the ancient system of hereditary bloodlines in favor of a new type of order premised around the consent of the governed and natural law, where all people are sovereign, not just a hereditary elite. And so they said, okay, look, we allowed revolutionary ideas, and so we got Napoleon and world wars, as was the case, and now Napoleon's dead, and so we have to put a clamp down and restore the oligarchies, and that's what they did. And they put a massive amount of censorship onto schools, onto printing presses, onto music, onto poetry, and it became like a really stifling environment. That's why there was such a big influx of great Republican Germans into the United States starting from this period in the 1820s because of the Carlsbad decrees. They were going to prison. They were being killed in Europe. So they had to come to the United States, and they became really positive members of the new young United States, and they contributed quite well. But that's why if they stayed in Europe, they would have been destroyed. So that's exactly the sort of like new Yalta carving up of the world that they want under the idea of, well, democracies, we allowed that, we tried it, it doesn't work. Humans can't self-manage, they can't self-govern. So we look at the crisis we have of economic collapse, forever wars, that's caused by the elected class being permitted to do its thing too much. So now we got to just let the chaos just peak. And then with the sufficient amount of like trauma and chaos, now we can bring about a new Congress of Vienna. And we can like bring back the nobility of Russia. We can restore the Romanovs. We can bring back a more controlling hand, overlording over the UK. We can bring back a more activist monarchy of King Charles III and his progeny. We can maybe, you have these agencies embedded within the United States who are taking conservatives and brainwashing them that your America, your republic is a fraud.
Yeah.
And so maybe you should think about trying to get back under the British fold, maybe become a member of the Commonwealth.
Maybe you should just abandon the whole idea of the American spirit. You should abandon all of your value systems. You should give up your heroes. George Washington was a fraud. They're all frauds. Donald Trump's a fraud. They're all bad guys. So just submit, assume the fetal position, and we will take care of you for the rest of your life. That is the message that is being forwarded by maybe unwittingly by some of these people. But that is the overarching message that they're giving you is to black pill, give up, and surrender. And that's why it's so important to be having conversations where you challenge some of the things that they're saying and you point out a lot of the hypocrisy and the chinks in their armor. So with that said, let's get into the news cycle.
Wait, but before we do that, let's as a bridge, let's listen to an ad from
do that. Yep, do that.
I forget his Rise. I think it's Rise. Here we are.
Howdy, Badlanders. Looking for something new to grab from your friends at Badlands Media and Rise Attire? Summertime is here. We got you covered. All new tank tops for men and women, featuring new iterations of the Devolution design in black, red, white, and even blue and green digital camo. Sick. We got them for Psywar and Clown World too. How about these bad boys? Psywar, Clown World, and Devolution beach towels to help you spark up a conversation with your new best friend or future spouse at the pool. And by popular demand, we've got all new athletic women's leggings that'll have you red pilling all the ladies in your Pilates class, whether they like it or not. Too bad. This is Badlands, baby, and we're strapped. Get some and support the new media parallel economy as much as f***ing possible at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
All right.
Your microphone went to the wrong one again.
Wow, you are very astute. I will fix that.
So it's funny that you sent me the Candace thing. I'll just share this quick anecdote real quick because I was thinking about in the shower this morning the Battle of Cowpens, which was like the turning point at the end of the Revolutionary War, where Daniel Morgan, the militia leader, asked his militia to fire 2 shots instead of 1. Because typically the militia and the vanguard would fire 1 shot and then they'd turn around and run away, and the regulars would take over. But he said, today I want y'all to stand your ground, reload, fire that 2nd shot. And they were all like, "You're crazy! Like they're gonna kill us if we do that. They have cannons, they have cavalry. Like we can't stand there and reload and fire a 2nd shot." He said, "Do it, and then when you run away, I want you to run over that tall hill behind you and run as fast as you can. You have to outrun the horses, you have to outrun professional soldiers, but you better run your ass off if you want to live. But you got to fire that 2nd shot." And they all did it, and that provoked the British. That provoked Cornwallis to run them down because he said, "This ends today." Daniel Morgan has been a pain in my ass for years. And started with Francis Marion, and then Daniel Morgan picked up the mantle, and it ends today. Go crush them. And so they all went charging over the hill, and waiting on the other side of the hill was the Continental Army, who had them surrounded, and that's how they won the Battle of Cowpens. That, by the way, was immortalized in The Patriot, the movie that Mel Gibson starred in, because that was a historically accurate movie that was supposed to say at the beginning of the movie, this is a historically accurate film based on real events. His character, Benjamin Martin, was an amalgamation of multiple militia leaders, mostly Francis Marion and Daniel Morgan. But before the film was released, British poets and scholars and philosophers caught wind of it, and they threatened the producers of the film. There was actually articles written about this. Threatened the producers of the film and basically said, "We will destroy you. We'll destroy your life if you make this film." And the compromise was basically, all right, we'll present it as a work of fiction, and remove the part at the beginning that says this is actually these were real events. This is all based on real history.
I didn't know that.
they didn't want to inspire America. They didn't want to create this piece of art that inspired Americans. Like, hey, this actually happened.
Right.
They changed a few things, like Gabriel, who was Heath Ledger. He was the older son who served in the army. Gabriel was actually the 15-year-old son of a 15-year-old nephew of Francis Marion, who was killed by British soldiers, and that was one of the things that inspired him to because he was anti-war, and then he became pro-war and became a militia leader. So they changed a few things to make, for the sake of storytelling, like artistic license. But overall, I mean, they presented an accurate portrayal of the events. And so like what happens at the end of the movie actually happened. And so I feel like that's the moment that we're in right now, though. Like we're in that moment where you're being asked to stand your ground and fire the second shot and support Donald Trump, despite the fact that he is running a narrative warfare operation that on its surface may not make sense to you on its surface. And a lot of people are turning around and running away and abandoning posts because they're scared and they are demoralized. But it's so important to realize that this is the moment where you have to stand up and not abandon ship yet. So that's what I was thinking about. And then I got out of the shower and I saw your message about this video. So I was already thinking about the American Revolution, and then you sent me the video, and that's why I was like, oh, hair on fire. Let's rip Candace Owens apart. So thank you for sending me that video. I'm glad we started with that. Now let's pivot to the Middle East, because I think this is the crux of the PSYOP, the narrative warfare that I think Donald Trump is running. That is, in my opinion, I think it'll go down as one of the more brilliant tactical operations that's ever been run, because the layers of genius involved. Okay, so Fernie asked the question earlier, didn't Israel create Hamas? So Hamas was founded in 1988, the same year that Yasser Arafat declared that he wanted to establish a Palestinian state. And that was like the effort that began in 1988, led to the signing of the Oslo Accords in 1993. And it was, I've showed that video before, we won't play it again, but it was Mahmoud Abbas who signed the Oslo Accords, not Yasser Arafat. Yasser Arafat organized it. Him and Yitzhak Rabin, who was the Israeli prime minister, former general from the IDF. Him and Arafat have been fighting one another for decades, right? And as the act of like the symbolic gesture, they didn't sign the Oslo Accords. A framework to withdraw the IDF from the West Bank and Gaza and recognize Palestinian statehood by Israel. They had their protege sign the peace deal. It was Shimon Peres on the Israeli side and Mahmoud Abbas on the Palestinian side. So Yasser Arafat was the leader of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization. Mahmoud Abbas inherited the successor to that, which was the Palestinian Authority. Hamas is something completely different. It was basically a street gang that became a political movement and eventually won an election in 2006. And the first thing they did when they won the election in Gaza was they turned their guns on the Palestinian Authority and drove them out of Gaza. And they've ruled Gaza ever since. They haven't held an election since. So, and then they tried to kill the prime minister of Palestine in 2018, and that led to Mahmoud Abbas defunding Hamas, saying, we're not giving you any more of our tax revenue because y'all can starve in Gaza. Good luck. And then that was when Bibi Netanyahu said, we have an opportunity here, Israelis. And if you back up to 93, Yitzhak Rabin is murdered by a Jewish terrorist, not by a Palestinian, but by a Jewish terrorist, somebody sympathetic to Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu is like starting his political career at this point. He had served as foreign minister. He had served as deputy foreign minister, and he had served as the ambassador to the UN for Israel. So he was all throughout the 80s. He was running, basically, he was positioning himself. He was the leader of the opposition in the Knesset at this time, and he was positioning himself to run for prime minister against either Yitzhak Rabin, but more likely Shimon Peres, because Yitzhak Rabin was very old at that point. 95, Yitzhak Rabin is murdered. The people who were on television basically prognosticating his murder included current Israeli national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. He was on television basically saying, we will do whatever it takes to prevent peace with Palestine. And then after Yitzhak Rabin's murder, Shimon Peres, who was like his protege, like steps in and serves as like interim prime minister until like an election is organized. And then that election is organized at the end of 95. That was when the Likud party won and Benjamin Netanyahu becomes prime minister for the first time in early 1996. That's when he forms his government. So because of the Oslo Accords, Yitzhak Rabin is murdered. And then because of the murder, Benjamin Netanyahu becomes prime minister for the very first time. That's the timeline. Fast forward to 2018. This is after Hamas has won their election and driven the Palestinian Authority out of Gaza. So back up to 2017, a peace deal was negotiated between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, where Hamas agrees to surrender government administration over Gaza to the Palestinian Authority. In early 2018, the prime minister is sent in an armed convoy to finalize the terms of the deal. What does the exact framework look like? And that was when a roadside bomb is detonated against his car. He's almost killed, and Hamas is blamed for it. And that was when they said, all right, we're done funding you. So Netanyahu then steps in and says, here's the opportunity. Let's go to Qatar and get money from Qatar. And then we're going to funnel that money. We're going to walk it on foot into Gaza in briefcases. And we're going to hand it to families, targeted families that we know have ties to Hamas leadership. And that money will be given to Hamas leadership. $32 million, I think a month is what they were giving them. It was a lot of money. We were talking tens of millions of dollars are being given at one time to Hamas to make sure that they could prop themselves up. The idea from Mahmoud Abbas's standpoint was if we cut off your funding, the people will eat you alive, and you'll be thrown out of power. So that when people talk about like, did Israel create Hamas? Well, maybe because 1988 when Hamas is founded, that's the same year Al Qaeda is founded, right? And Al Qaeda was certainly, I think, draws its origins to the CIA and Five Eyes and Mossad and all that. And ISIS can certainly draw, I think, its origins to them.
Well, there's definitely a common policy, right? Like where Al Qaeda appealed, I think it was principally a Sunni target audience. I guess was it the case that that Hamas was appealing also to a Sunni audience, or were they a Shia audience?
That's a good question. I mean, I would assume they would appeal to Sunni, maybe.
Because if they were an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, it must have been a Sunni audience. What am I saying? You would appeal. You would think it's Sunni because they're in Palestine, they're Sunni. So, but Sylvia in California might be in the chat. She's a Palestinian Christian who lives in America, and she might have some insight into that, Sylvia, if you're around. But I think Hamas probably appeals more to the Sunni. But the point is that they probably have origins to intelligence. But we can absolutely, there's investigations underway right now in Israel, and it's caused a ton of political upheaval. The back and forth between Netanyahu and his opposition, this scandal that he was taking Qatari money and giving it to Hamas, and more recently, when all of this was being exposed by the now former Shin Bet director who was investigating all of this, and then was fired by Netanyahu. Netanyahu pointed the finger at Qatar and said it was Qatar that was doing it, not me. And then the Qataris stood up and said, "Wait a minute, Netanyahu, we gave you that money. Whatever you did with it after we handed it to you is on you. Like, we weren't wiring money to Hamas. We were giving you the money, and then you were doing whatever with it." So, it's a lot of finger pointing going on right now. But yes, that is the crux of the story. Okay. So what happened yesterday? Well, before we get to what happened yesterday, let's talk about what's happening right now. Right now, September 10th, the United Nations General Assembly has convened in New York City. This has been like a long anticipated meeting. And what the difference between this meeting between years past is that a number of countries, there already are like 150 countries around the world that recognize the nation of Palestine.
but a number of countries have said, key countries said, we are going to recognize at the UN General Assembly meeting, we're going to formally recognize Palestine. Those countries include Britain, France, the Netherlands, Canada, Australia, and maybe New Zealand. New Zealand said they're on the fence. They might do it. And then there's a number of others that said that they're probably going to do it too. But those are like the really significant ones. But think about that, though. Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, that's Five Eyes minus America, right? There was that video that you sent me a week or two ago of Netanyahu saying, you say it's Five Eyes, but it's really Six Eyes because Mossad is the sixth eye.
Yeah.
So you have all the other nations in Five Eyes minus America formally recognizing Palestine. Britain and France, plus France. Britain and France are the ones who signed the Pico-Sykes Agreement in 1916, 1917, which is implemented at the Paris Conference in 1919, and that is what drew the formal lines that now create the Middle East, the national borders of Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, modern day Israel / Palestine. Back then it was called Mandate Palestine, and now it's what's now called Jordan, but back then it was called Transjordan. So that was all solidified by the British and the French. So the British and French, and then France is given Lebanon and Syria as protectorates, and Britain is given Iraq, Transjordan, and Mandate Palestine as protectorates. And then their other partner, Ibn Saud, is given the rest of Arabia, and that's where he forms Saudi Arabia. The Qataris had their little peninsula, and then the Emiratis eventually formed the UAE, and then Oman is Oman. Oman's always been, I think, as I understand it, a pretty lush and thriving society. But the point is that this is all formed by Britain and France at the end of World War I. And now Britain and France are turning their back on, because remember, in 1917, you also get the Balfour Declaration, and that was when the British government formally promised the Rothschild family that they would eventually establish the state of Israel in what is, at the time, was then becoming Mandate Palestine. So the point is that there is a lot of anger right now in the Jewish diaspora against the United Nations because of this, particularly in Israel. And to that extent, Mahmoud Abbas, who has always been the peace seeker, he's always been, he's the guy with the white hair and the glasses who's always worn the Western suit, while Yasser Arafat always wore the keffiyeh and dressed like, the Arab militant. Mahmoud Abbas, and these guys are very close friends. Mahmoud Abbas was always presented himself as a Western businessman. And he wasn't a militant. He was always the earnest peace-seeking partner in that relationship. And now he has had his visa revoked. He had a delegation of 80 diplomats who were coming with him. All of them had their visas revoked. They're not allowed in America to attend this meeting. That's caused a lot of outrage in the international community. And so we'll see what happens. I'll be very interested to see what happens at the UN today and what comes out of this conference. But I've been warning people for weeks about this conference. I was like, this is going to be a big deal. Somebody is going to throw a wrench in the apple cart, just like October 1st, 2023. I was warning people that when we were on the cusp of Saudi-Israeli normalization, somebody was going to throw a wrench and flip over the apple cart, and then we got October 7th. So now we come to yesterday, and what happened yesterday? Well, I guess technically maybe it happened today, but Israel is hours ahead of us. Israel bombed Qatar now, and so let's just pull up a map because I think people need to understand geography here. The significance of this. Okay, so. Your mic did the thing again, I think. Did it?
I don't know.
Nope. I can only tell because they're like it's very clean when you're on the right mic, and when you're not, there's feedback in the background. But
it's weird, man. No, I just have this. Everything seems to be in order.
Oh, okay. No problem then. No problem.
I can mute myself though.
No. It's whatever. Now it's not doing it, but it was doing it a minute ago. But no big deal. Okay. So Israel has been at war now since October 7th. They've been at war with Gaza. They have been running operations. The West Bank, the rest of Palestine, has been under military occupation since 1967. So they've been running operations in the West Bank. They've been expanding. These illegal settlements. They've been running operations in Lebanon over the past year against Hezbollah. That was where like the cell phone thing happened. And they now more recently, since December, have been running operations in Syria. They want control of southern Syria. And this is all part of the Greater Israel Project. You and I have talked about that. So also, like running concurrently to all of this, you have Qatar. So Qatar, despite all of the malevolent past, because they have been a CIA, MI6, Muslim Brotherhood epicenter for a long time. And there's a reason that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia and Donald Trump went to war with them in 2017. It seems like whatever was going on there in that conflict, that was resolved 5 days before Trump left office, January 15th, 2021. They signed a peace deal. Qatar and Saudi Arabia ended their years-long like conflict. And it was pretty intense. Like MBS put out a request for proposal to have a canal dug. There already is a canal like right here, but he wanted the canal to go all the way around Qatar and turn Qatar into like an island. And they wouldn't let Qatari ships embark or like land at any of the ports at the UAE, at Egypt, at Saudi Arabia. I mean, it was a pretty intense economic warfare operation, cyber warfare operation against Qatar, psychological warfare operation. So that gets resolved. Trump, I think, was at the heart of all that because he has been, as he explains. Yeah.
Sorry, just quick question before you continue. Do we know which house the royal house in Qatar comes out of? Are they tied more to the Hashemites, the House of Saud? Are they their own thing, or what are they?
They're their own thing. It's the Al Thani house. So okay. Al Thani is, as I understand it, they came to the region. I think in like 1700, around that time. I believe they have been formally in power since like the 1830s. And the traditional industry in Qatar is pearls. So Qatar, if you like, my understanding is that they're like all their sigils and stuff are all like maritime, like mermaids and water stuff, because they are they do maritime trade. But I think as I understand it, the largest pearl like clusters, like pearl embankments, farms, whatever, are like located off the coast of Qatar. And so that's what their trade has been historically. And then they got into natural gas more recently because there's enormous natural gas, fields around Qatar as well. So that's where all this like enormous wealth, and you've seen Doha kind of like explode in terms of development. Not saying that Qatar is like a perfect society or anything. I'm just saying that's their economy. Tamim is the relatively young, I think he's like in his late 40s, 50s, something like that, relatively young leader in Qatar. Apparently he's been friends with Trump for a long time. That's the way Trump, like in 2017, when he was coming to the White House, Trump and him met when Trump went to the Saudi Arabia in May of 2017 to do the sword dance. Him and Tamim met. That was when the conflict with Saudi Arabia really began. Once a month later, in June of 2017, MBS becomes crown prince. It really kicks off. That's when he like really kicks things off against them. And then in September of 2017, Tamim comes to the White House and Trump explains to the press. He says, "These people aren't going to believe me when I say this, but you and I have been friends for a long time. And I'm going to help you figure this out. Like, we're going to get through this." So I can't help but wonder if Tamim and Trump have been working together to get some of the bad elements that are inside Qatar, to isolate them and get them out. We need to wait to see the actuals on that, but that's my speculation. That's maybe why we saw Tamim and MBS sign a peace deal at the end of like 5 days before Trump left office. The timing there is not lost on me. So throughout the Biden administration, what's interesting is that once that peace deal is signed and these hostilities are lowered between the Arab world, basically the entire Arab League and Qatar kind of assumes this role. And Steve Wickoff explained this when he went on Tucker and he did the interview with Tucker. He said the Qataris are basically trying to rebrand themselves as like the conference room of the world. They want to be the peace mediators for anytime there's a conflict anywhere. They want to bring both sides into Doha and resolve it and become like the mediators. And we saw them do this with Donald Trump and the Taliban when they signed the Doha agreement in 2020. Something that many people were very skeptical of at the time, that the Taliban are never going to honor this. And the crux of the Doha agreement was that America would leave Afghanistan and relinquish Afghanistan to the Taliban. And in exchange, the Taliban would hunt down and kill any terrorist organization operating within their borders. And then we saw the withdrawal, right? And was it August 21? That whole disaster, which was the bombing of Abbey Gate, the 13 soldiers are killed. That was done by ISIS-K, which is the ISIS affiliate operating out of Pakistan. And Pakistan, of course, was the base of operations for the Mujahideen, the funding of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan back in the 80s, which was being run by Zbigniew Brzezinski and those guys. So Pakistan, was basically turned into like a breeding house for terrorists in the 1980s. So ISIS-K goes into Afghanistan, bombs the Abbey Gate, and Joe Biden and the U.S. military and the CIA do nothing to go after the perpetrators. It's actually the Taliban who go after them, hunt them down, and kill them, not for Joe Biden, but as they say, on behalf for Donald Trump, because they were keeping their word that they made to Donald Trump when they signed the Doha Agreement, which I think was a very significant moment because it demonstrated that not only were the Taliban men of honor, far more so than anybody serving in the U.S. government, like in Congress. None of them ever keep their word on anything. But Qatar proved itself that it was able to bring two sides together to mediate a solution, and both sides would honor that solution. America left Afghanistan, and the Taliban hunted down those ISIS-K terrorists and killed them on behalf of Donald Trump, even though he wasn't in office. That's significant to me. So now Trump is back in office. Now, throughout the Biden administration, Qatar was at the center of trying to resolve the Hamas idea, like the Israel Gaza situation. Like they were serving as the conference room where Hamas would come, the leadership of Hamas is living in Doha. But the Israelis would come to Doha. Hamas would be in Doha. The Americans would also be there. And the way it's explained to us now is that we didn't learn this until the Trump administration, but as Adam Bowler, who's Trump's special envoy for hostage negotiations, as he explained it, he says that basically they would bring them in and they would put them in different rooms, and then there would be a mediator who would go from each room and kind of like explain what one group said for the other group, right? And Adam Bowler was like, this is retarded. Like, we're not doing it this way. Like, bring them in the room. We're going to sit across the table. I want to look these guys in the eyes, and like, we're going to talk to them. And then he went back on CNN after that. Adam Bowler, Jewish, by the way, college roommates with Jared Kushner. He comes back and he says, you know what? These guys actually aren't that bad. Like, I think we can make a peace deal with them. That's what he says like 3 times in one interview on CNN, and, people's heads exploded. But he said, it's not like these guys have horns coming out of their heads. Like, they're human beings, and we can find a landing spot for this whole thing. We don't need to continue this war. And then the media then went after Adam Bowler and tried to destroy him. So that brings us to yesterday. On the eve of this UN General Assembly meeting, Bibi Netanyahu decides he is going to fire a missile into Doha. And by the way, Qatar has served as the mediator in every single, like all these peace deals that Trump is signing, every single one of them. Qatar is at the center of it. And that's what Steve Wickoff said too. The one in Africa, the one in Cambodia, the one, with Russia and Ukraine, all of them are being resolved by the Qataris. Like, they're the ones who are acting as the brokers in the deal. So so Doha has kind of come in like this weird roundabout way to like become the symbolic, like the symbol for peace, or the symbol for the Peace Conference Center, right? Which is what their intent is. That's what Steve Witkoff said. Their intent is to be the like the city of peace, like Doha.
Right. So I had listened to a briefing by Joaquin Flores, who's pretty good.
Yeah, he's great.
He had a slightly different take on this, in that he was hypothesizing, and he didn't really bring up too many data points. But I don't know if this is something I haven't looked deeply into the background either, so I'm just kind of getting other people's assessments right now. But he was saying that he was hypothesizing that Hamas, under the influence of whoever at Qatar, had come to agree to the terms of a ceasefire that had been brokered by the Trump team and Hamas, which Bibi is afraid of and wanted to sabotage. Is that at all a possibility in your mind? Or
I've definitely read accounts of that, and I think it's very possible that is what was happening. I think it's very possible that Hamas was going to relent and agree. And there's also been anecdotes, by the way, like all these situations where they were about to have a peace deal and then it got blown up. It was told to us in the Western media that it was Hamas's fault that the deal didn't happen, but we actually have learned in recent months, because these Israeli leaders have such enormous egos and hubris, they've actually come out and bragged that they were like, Itamar Ben-Gvir's come out and bragged that he blew up one of the deals. Smotrich came out and bragged that he blew up one of the deals.
Yeah.
That Hamas had actually agreed to everything that they had asked for, that Israel had asked for, and then Israel came in at the 11th hour and said, well, that's great, but now we're asking for more. And they and they moved the goalpost. And Hamas was like, well, wait a minute. We're like, that no, we don't agree to that. And they're like, what? You don't want to have a peace deal? Okay, no peace then. And like, that's apparently how like all these negotiations have gone. And that's what a lot of different accounts have all said that. And then we've had the Israeli leadership come out and brag about it, like, to others. And then those people have disclosed that. So it does seem like Israel is the one who is animating a lot of the conflict. It doesn't mean Hamas isn't guilty of whatever, but as far as like bringing this thing to a head, bringing this thing to a close, it seems like Israel has Netanyahu, all of his incentive structure is predicated on keeping the conflict going, because as soon as this thing shuts down, he's going to trial for these 3 felony charges that were brought against him in 2019. And 2 of them I've looked into. 2 of them are slam dunks in my opinion. I think 2 of them he's going to be convicted on. The third one, is probably more subjective, but 2 of them, I mean, there's a recording of him doing exactly what he's charged with. So it's like he's going to be charged, and he's facing like 15 years in prison. So his personal incentive structure, which has nothing to do with Israeli national security, is to keep these conflicts going, because he's recognized as the most capable war hawk in Israel, and he's the one who's going to keep Israel safe from the big bad terrorists. So yesterday or last night or whenever it was, they fire a missile into Doha because, as I explained, the Hamas leadership have been living as billionaires with a B, billionaires in like penthouses of these high rises in Doha, which is mind blowing. It doesn't make any sense, but the Muslim Brotherhood lives there too. You have a whole slew of former CIA agents who have gone over there, started NGOs. The NGOs are then funded by the Qataris, by the UAE, by the Saudis, whoever. It just seems like it's a viper's nest of just deep state actors. It feels
and isn't like the U.S. Headquarters of CENTCOM? Don't they have their headquarters also right there in Qatar as well?
Yes, CENTCOM. I think it's called Aliyad. The Air Force Base. That is that's CENTCOM, like Central Command. I think the headquarters are actually in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. But the one in region is in Qatar. And
the Middle East. And Steve
Witkoff has actually explained that during his interview with Tucker too. And he said, what's unique about that base is that that's the only base. I think he said this, the only base in the world where the local nation, Qatar, came in and offered to pay for everything surrounding the base. Like they came and built out the water infrastructure, the electrical grid, like all the things that are going to be needed to feed the base, and then also to provide all the amenities that are necessary around the base. Whereas it seems like in other places, it's the U.S. government footing the bill for that. Like we pay the other countries because we hear all the things we're going to need to make this base practical. Like we need you to build up your water systems, your infrastructure, like the roads, like all that stuff. But Wyckoff said what's unique is the Qataris actually recognized the value in having that base in their country. So they came forth and said, no, we'll pay for all that. To me, that seems significant. But, doesn't mean anything one way or the other. So this missile is fired into Doha. I think maybe it was multiple missiles. And the idea was that they understood that the leadership of Hamas had convened in this one place. There are anecdotes out there. It's really early right now. We're like operating 24 hours after the fact. So you gotta have to wait for the dust to settle to sort out the facts. But some of the reported anecdotes now are that calls were made to get them in the same room about the peace deal. And then once they knew they were in the same room, that's when they fired the missile. So that kind of like shady underhandedness, there's allegations are being thrown around. We'll have to wait and see what's true and what's not. But the point is that they did. Bibi Netanyahu, we know this now because Caroline Leavitt has confirmed this, as has Trump, and a number of other people have confirmed it. Did not pick up the phone and call Trump and tell him this was happening. They didn't. Ron Dermer, the Minister of Strategic Affairs, who is like Netanyahu's right-hand man, he was in a meeting a few days ago with, I think, Wyckoff, maybe some others. He knew about it at the point because they've been planning this missile strike for a long time, it sounds like. He knew about the missile strike, didn't say anything to Wyckoff, didn't say anything to Marco Rubio, didn't say anything to anybody who would have had knowledge of the meeting. They pick up the phone and call. I think Dermer picked up the phone, it sounds like, and called not the White House, but the U.S. military, CENTCOM, I guess, minutes before they were doing it, and basically said, hey, we're doing this. See ya. Hung up the phone. And then CENTCOM called the White House and told the White House. The White House picked up the phone, called Wyckoff. Wyckoff picks up the phone and calls the Qataris to warn them. And by the time he's on the phone with the Qataris, the way that it's told from the Qatari perspective is, as they were like answering the phone, the missiles were hitting and there were explosions in the city. And Wyckoff was like, yeah, just giving you a heads up that the missile that Israel is firing missiles at y'all. And they're like, yeah, we know. Like we're looking at the explosion right now, asshole. So the point is that Bibi Netanyahu has made us yet again look like a bunch of jackasses. And this might be like the last straw. This might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think Trump said he's making he's going to make formal commentary on it today. So we'll wait and see what he says. But let's look at some of these news articles just to kind of get a early read on this. So
yeah, let's do this for about 5 minutes, and then I just realized that there's something I really got to do in about 5, maybe 10 minutes max. But
that's cool. And if you need to jump off, I can wrap up solo.
Yeah?
So if you want, if you want to jump off, just jump off. I'll run through this, and we'll get everyone out of here. So
awesome.
Here's Trump saying that he condemns the IDF attack on Qatar. The strike is a close U.S. ally. The strike on a close U.S. ally was Israel's unilateral decision, the president insisted. The quote is, in a statement posted Tuesday on Truth Social, Trump said that the Israeli bombing inside a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States did not advance Israel or America's goals. Quote, I view Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the U.S. and feel very badly about the location of the attack, he wrote, emphasizing that the strike was a decision made by Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was not a decision made by me. Trump said that as soon as he was informed about the operation, he directed U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to warn Qatari officials, but noted the alert came too late to stop the attack. The president claimed that eliminating Hamas was a worthy goal, but expressed hope that this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. Trump has since spoken with Netanyahu, who told him he wanted to make peace, and with Qatari leaders whom he thanked for their support and assured that such a thing will not happen again on their soil. Qatar's Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, denounced the strike as an act of state terrorism and warned that his country reserved the right to respond. He accused Netanyahu of undermining regional stability for personal gain and said that the incident had derailed ongoing U.S. brokered mediation efforts aimed at securing a ceasefire in Gaza and release of Israeli hostages. The White House called the strike an unfortunate incident. Trump said he has directed U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to finalize a defense cooperation agreement with Qatar, which is designated a major non-NATO ally. So now we're basically going to sign something with Qatar. It says, you do this again, Israel, and we're coming after you, which is a fantastic development. I hope that actually happens. Let's look at just a few of the fallout from this. Moscow slams Israel over Qatar strike. So now you have Putin coming after Netanyahu for this. The EU is freezing all payments to Israel as a result. The Qataris are calling Israel a terrorist state. Basically, everything that the Zionist neocon Republican Party says about Iran is what Israel actually is, and I would agree with all of those descriptors. I would agree with that. And then here's the part that is like the worst part of the whole thing. Well, maybe not the worst part, but one of the really unfortunate things. They didn't even get the targets.
Yeah, I had read that the negotiators on the Hamas side had left their phones in the negotiation room or in some particular room and went out to pray. And because all of the coordination was centered around the signals emitted by the cell phones, that it was presumed that they were in there, but they actually were outside praying. So nothing. It was a bit of a failure, apparently. That's what I.
Yeah. And the early reports is that family members were killed. Like family members were killed, and even one Qatari security official was killed. So a Qatari was killed, and like other people who weren't the target were killed, but the guys who they actually wanted to get were not killed in the strike. And the response from Israel is, "We'll get them next time."
Yeah, that's
which sounds pretty ominous. Yeah, that sounds pretty ominous. Like, okay, so we're going to fire more missiles, and this is the guy who said it. It's Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Yichiel Leiter. And he says, if we didn't get them this time, then we'll get them next time. And he described Hamas as enemies of Western civilization and argued that Israel's actions were reshaping the Middle East in ways moderate states understood and valued. Right now, we may be subject to a little bit of criticism. They'll get over it. Well, that's actually not true, because here is a Newsweek article from, actually, it was published early Tuesday morning, so before the attack. And this has been a development that I've been tracking for a while now. Landmark Trump deal on verge of collapse. And the landmark deal they're talking about, of course, is the Abraham Accords. And it's not Qatar talking about ending the Abraham Accords. It's the UAE. And the UAE, as this article goes on to explain, has been Israel's strongest Arab ally since 2020, since the Abraham Accords were signed. They have expelled all the Israeli diplomats from the UAE, not because of what happened in Qatar or necessarily what's going on in Gaza, but because some of these people, namely the ambassador, I think, to the UAE, apparently did something really inappropriate in public in front of like all of the Emirati officials. It sounds like he was like groping a woman or something, but something that was extremely disrespectful. And you have to think that like if this happened at a private party or something, right, they wouldn't have made a big deal out of it. But apparently he did something that embarrassed the like Emirati government to the extent that they had to tell him to leave the UAE. And so he left, and then like basically like the whole mission left. And they've been, the UAE has been like slamming Israel now for a while. And it says right here, annexation. The reason that they're doing it, that they're saying this though, is because Bezalel Smotrich came out a few days ago or last week and said, we're going to annex 85% of the West Bank. We're going to turn it into Israel. And they said, quote, annexation by, and by the way, the Nick Fuentes, not necessarily him, but like Scott Ritter and some of these other analysts have all said that the Emiratis and the Saudis don't give a shit about Gaza. They don't give a shit about the Palestinians, and they're perfectly happy sacrificing all of them to become friends with Israel. I don't think that's true at all. And here's the proof. Quote, annexation by Israel of Palestinian land, if pursued, would not only close the door to peace and integration, it would betray the very spirit of the Abraham Accords. Said the Emirati, I think this is the ambassador, and he says it is a matter of principle. It is a matter of peace for our region. It is also a red line. This is a woman. She said in similar comments made last week, the Emirati envoy said such a move would undermine prospects for lasting peace. In August, Israel approved a plan to expand settlements in the West Bank, linking the city of Ma'ale Adumim to East Jerusalem. And then the last story I'll show, and then we can close it down, is this one. And this is from Monday. Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel, says he wants we need to dismantle the Palestinian Authority, not Hamas. The Palestinian Authority must be dismantled, and the government of the West Bank must be abolished. He says, quote, the Palestinian Authority must disappear from the map, and the villages from which the terrorists came should look like Rafah and Bayet Hanun, which is Gaza. He declares, praising the bravery of the courageous soldiers and Khalil student who engaged in neutralizing terrorists, thereby likely preventing an even larger attack. And he's referring to a shooting that occurred in Jerusalem last week. So it says that the state of Israel cannot accept a Palestinian Authority that raises and educates its children to murder Jews. So this is like a PSYOP or a PSYACT that I think is being run against Mahmoud Abbas to remove him from power so that a more militant government like Hamas can rise up in the West Bank, take control, and then justify a campaign against them, which would result in the annexation of all of Palestine.
Yep. Well, definitely, yeah. I think the idea, if you want to create terrorists in the future, the best thing to do is to make life as unbearable and unjust and destructive on children in the present. And they've certainly done a very, if that's their objective, is to create a predictable, religiously fanatic enemy, which will justify a future fight and thus expansion, then they're doing everything exactly right. You brutalize, you destroy the lives of so many people, and this was the case in Palestine, especially Gaza, over the past couple of years, especially not that there hasn't been terrible murder, famine, injustice in the decades before that. But yeah, radicalizing a people. I mean, this is the way the 30 Years' War also was manufactured, right? Is you create a situation of Catholic versus Protestant revengism, this feeling of multi-generational hate. And you always have your mercenaries from the outside going in, acting like Catholics, burning Protestant villages down and killing everybody, men, women, children, and then disappearing. And then doing the same thing, acting like they're Protestants, killing Catholic villages, destroying everything, and then saying down with Catholicism, and then creating a feeling of hate and revengism in the survivors, who then become the more radicalized leaders of terrorist groups in the next generation or a few years into the future. So, yeah, you can definitely see the formula being applied loudly right now, and any type of emergence of moderate leadership capable of negotiating in a world with nuance to achieve workable outcomes, they have to be eliminated. They cannot be tolerated. That type of actor, whether it's like a Yasser Arafat, or whether it's whomever, right? That we see emerging within Hamas, who realizes that they were duped, that they actually, many Hamas leaders, even though they played a role in this inside job, have gotten wiped out, have gotten killed. I don't think they were given the full picture of what role they were actually playing. And those who are waking up are also targeted for destruction. So, I think that what you've gone through here is really valuable. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns that we still have to wait to see what's coming to the surface, but I think you've provided a solid way of hypothesizing and making sense out of the disorder. And again, going back to what Candace Owens was saying, a lot of these things, what she was saying are the cause of the United States, are actually the cause not only of what has targeted the U.S. for destruction, the B'nai B'rith, the Scottish Rite, but also that's what's behind a lot of the things like today. Like the reason why you have this psychopathic faction within Israel has everything to do with the fact that the B'nai B'rith have been overseeing the growth of things like the ADL, like things like the Zionist movement in general. And the fact that you have the Scottish Rite seated long after the American Revolution was over in 1801 by pro-British loyalist paramilitary groups around Augustine Prévost, followers of him, who always were in opposition to the American Revolution, the principles of the United States. That's what seeded and created this fifth columnist of Scottish Rite operatives inside of the United States, both northern and southern branches, that people like Albert Pike, who was a big fanatic around the reconstruction of Solomon's Temple and the restoration of some crusader state that had formerly existed only during the Crusades of forever wars back in the medieval ages. This is the sort of thing that's shaping directly all of the injustice and destruction and death that we're seeing unfolding now. So these sleight of hands are
by,
really something.
And by the way, Netanyahu's leadership, like Itamar Ben
Mm-hmm.
Gvir, are saying we are going to rebuild Solomon's temple. He's like, that is happening. Like that is 100% about to happen. So just like when you talk about Albert Pike wanting to do that, whatever, 200 years ago, 150 years ago, right now, the guys who are in charge of in Israel, Netanyahu's security cabinet, are openly calling to rebuild Solomon's temple. So it's all of that stuff, all the occult stuff is connected directly to the current government of Israel. And, you know, people are lamenting like the way that Trump has handled this whole thing, like that he has, he appears to be capitulating with it. But if you look around the information battle space, Steve Bannon, MPG Stewart is in the chat, like quoting Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon has been slamming Israel for ever since June 13th, but particularly the past like couple weeks. I've never heard Steve Bannon ever criticize Israel one time prior to the attack on Iran in June.
Yeah.
And he has been going hard against Israel ever since. So
hey, you want to hear something kind of weird here?
Yeah.
Just going through George Farmer, the husband of Candace.
Yeah.
He's actually the co-founder of the Bannon Group, a finance political consulting group that Bannon had co-created with him that he runs with Turning Point UK. That's a weird combination with this whole strange Catholic faction within England.
Strange.
Yeah, that's tied to the, and there's some weird Habsburg connections too, to the Thorn and Taxis family, the Habsburg operatives who are trying to, they've got their own idea of restoring a new Congress of Vienna that we've already gone through. I've written about it, and you know, I've got my deep feelings of mistrust around Bannon's connections to that agency.
Yeah,
but something to just hold in mind. The past is influencing the present in all sorts of important ways that we often lose sight of. But just good to hold these anomalies in the back of our minds.
Yeah, and the fact that this entire conversation is happening on the surface in the most mainstream places, right? I mean, I would say that Bannon's show has become one of like the mainstream.
Oh yeah.
Like he watches the mainstream media and talks about the mainstream media on his show, but the mainstream media watches his show and talks about it on mainstream media. So it's like the fact that this conversation is now at the very center of political discourse is a good thing. Like that is a good thing. And had Trump kept all the Zionists out of his administration and steered away from this whole thing would have gone into hibernation, and then reemerged 15 years from now. And we'd be dealing with it 15 years from now. I'd rather deal with it now and really deal with it as opposed to letting it continue to fester, you know?
True that. So let's do this. Let me play the last ad, soft disclosure. And then if there's any comments that caught your eye, we can read those, and we'll have to round it out.
Yep.
So soft disclosure time. Here it is. Oh, I'm supposed to read something. Okay. Get ready to ignite a revolution with soft disclosure. This is not just a product drop. It's a full-on movement that's about to shake things up. This is personal care that doesn't mess around. No compromises, just pure, unapologetic quality. First up, the lotion, supercharged with aloe, goat milk, and our exclusive Badlands oil blend. This isn't your average drugstore goop. It's a barrier-restoring powerhouse. Choose unscented when you want clean and simple, or vanilla citrus when you want to smell like you actually give a damn. Then the dealer range. Natural, aluminum-free, and straight-up badass. Built to last 2 months of daily use with scents like crisp mint or bold lemon grapefruit. No gimmicks, just protection that actually delivers. And finally, the tallow bar. And no, it's not deodorant. It's a vanilla coffee tallow stick. Primal fuel for skin that's been through hell. Rub it where you need serious moisture. Elbows, hands, knees. Basically, anywhere you're tired of feeling like sandpaper or just want baby soft skin. Every bottle, stick, and bar is handcrafted in Colorado by Badlanders who live and breathe truth. Partnering with Willow Wind Farm and Badlands Media, we're putting our money where our morals are. Soft disclosure. Make truth your routine. Head to softdisclosure.com. Use Badlands code Badlands for $5 off and join the fight today. Okay. Any little comments or anything?
Yeah, we have a rant from Z. Is it ZBM? I just lost it. There's ZBM. Yes, it says Ghost. You should do an episode on the movie The Patriot. Would love to hear more. Loving the history, guys. I appreciate that. Go to. I think we did talk about that history a little more in depth on a 4th of July episode of Breaking History. Maybe last year. But if you go to the 4th of July episode, I think last year of Badlands book or Badlands story hour, they did The Patriot, and they went like super long. It was like a 3-hour show, I think. And I had just written an article. They looked at the article I had written for the Substack about the history. So go check that out. But yeah, maybe next year, 4th of July, we'll do something like that.
Sounds like a plan. All right. So is that about it?
That's it.
All right. Gordon, it was a pleasure. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Until next week, see you soon.
See you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.